Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to the Wealthy Trustee webinar. I'm super excited that you guys are here tonight. So tonight I have a webinar for you guys. It's a short presentation teaching you how to transfer wealth the right way and how to actually set up a trust. So if you don't know what a trust is or how to actually create one or how to transfer wealth and keep it within many generations of your bloodline, then you have come to the right place. So my name is Christina Yvette. I am a trust strategist. I have been a trust strategist and a trustee for 11 years. So I'm going to teach you what I know and what I've learned in the last 11 years. So without further ado, let me go ahead and jump into the presentation. And after the short presentation, then I will be able to answer any questions that you guys might have based off the information that we provided tonight. So let's dive in. I hope everyone is doing well. Are you guys ready? Let me know in the chat. Hello, hello. Okay. Awesome. Let me see here. Boom. Good. All right. So, as I mentioned, the way that I actually became a trustee was by way of real estate. So, I was a registered nurse and I was in that field for 8 years. And I was absolutely frustrated in my career because I was pretty much working 5, 6 days a week, 12-hour shifts. And I was so frustrated because I was spending more time in the hospital with my coworkers than I was at home with my 1-year-old baby. So I ended up going to a seminar where they teach you how to flip houses. And in this 3-day seminar, I learned so much about real estate that 6 months after the seminar, I bought my first property. So this property was a little 2 bedroom, 1 bath in Miami. And I bought it for 89,000 and I sold it for $235,000. But before all of that happened, my mentor told me, you need to put that property into a trust. And I didn't know what a trust was. I didn't understand why I needed a trust. But my mentor was someone who had already been in real estate for decades, and I took heed to the information. So I set up a trust. I transfer that property from my LLC into the trust because that property was undergoing renovations. And I didn't want anyone to be able to take that property away from me if they end up stepping on a nail or getting hit by plywood. So I wanted to be able to protect that very first property that I acquired. And from that point in time, I have been operating within trusteeship. So, what I want to do is I want to first let you guys know what a trust is because a lot of people they have heard the term trust, but they're not familiar. So, a trust is an entity. It's a living, breathing entity just like you. So, you out here in society are considered a living, breathing entity. So, that means that a trust can do anything and everything that you can do. So, if you can build credit, a trust can build credit. If you can buy a house, a trust can also buy a house. Now, the way that this entity comes into existence is through a contract. So what we're saying here is that a trust is a contract or what we call a contractual entity, okay? Now, there's two parts to the contract that I want you to know of right now. The first part is the declaration where you're declaring what it is and what it is not. So you're declaring, hey, in this contract, I'm setting up a trust, right? And I am not setting up an LLC, a joint venture, a partnership, or any other type of contract, okay? So those are very, very, very important things. Now that we understand what a trust is, right? A living, breathing entity, what we need to understand is who are the parties involved in this contract. So the parties involved in this contract, we have three parties. We have the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. The grantor is the creator of the trust. Now, when you're doing your research about trust, you might see the words settlor or trustor. Those three words mean the same thing, which practically means that it is the creator of the trust, right? So they're the individual that creates the trust for the benefit of someone else, which is the beneficiary, and they are going to fund the trust or donate to the trust. So they're going to place the very first asset into the trust, okay? So with this trust, right, because it's a living, breathing entity, you have to give it value, okay? Now, the second party is the trustee. That's the controller of the trust. So the trustee is the only person within the trust organization that is labeled as a fiduciary, okay? And so that person is in control of the trust. So they are in control of the management and the administration of the trust, as well as all of the assets that are placed in the trust, and they have full control over the trust funds, okay? Now, the last party involved is the beneficiary. That is the inheritor of the trust. So those individuals are going to be receiving benefits from the trust, like distributions. Once the trust is terminated, then at that point, all of the assets that are placed inside of the trust will then be transferred to the beneficiaries. Now that we understand that this is a contractual entity, let's now move forward so that I can tell you the different types of trust, okay? So there's hundreds of different types of trust, and I'm not going to go over them this evening. We don't have enough time for that. But I want to be able to share certain categories that you should be aware of when you're doing your research about trust, okay? Now, the first category that I want to share with you is express versus implied. An express trust is a written trust. That means that it is in black and white, and it is on a contract, right? So it is printed, it is tangible, you can feel the actual contract, okay? Versus an implied trust, which means that it is that verbal agreement, right, that happened between the grantor and the trustee, but it's oral. So it doesn't exist. It's not in writing, it's not on paper, okay? The second category that I want to give you is simple versus complex. A simple trust is shorter in nature. So that means that there's less rules and regulations in a simple trust. With a simple trust, distributions are required, which means that the simple trust cannot hold trust funds. 100% of the money that's inside of the trust has to be distributed to the beneficiaries versus a complex trust. A complex trust, it is longer in nature, so there's more provisions inside of that trust, right? There's more terms and conditions. And because it's complex in nature, distributions are not required, which means that funds can be held inside of the trust fund, okay? The next category that I want to give you guys is discretionary versus non-discretionary. So a discretionary trust is a trust where the trustee has full discretion to be able to make decisions for the trust that is not inside of the trust contract. So for example, if you wanted to invest in crypto, but the trust contract doesn't say anything about crypto, with this discretionary trust, you're still able to make those decisions versus non-discretionary, which means that the trustee cannot make any decisions that is not embedded inside of the contract. Okay, so you have limitations. The next category that I want to give you guys is statutory versus non-statutory. So a statutory trust is where every single state has their own statutes and codes. And with this type of trust, the state statutes and codes are embedded inside of the contract, which means that that trust that is a statutory trust is limited to where it can only be operated in that one state. Okay. The next thing is that that trust needs to be registered with the public records, which means that everyone is able to search the public records and find your trust documents, and they're able to see what's inside of the trust, including all of the assets and who the beneficiaries are. Okay. Versus a non-statutory trust. A non-statutory trust is where the state statutes and codes are not embedded inside of the contract. So because those codes are not embedded inside of the contract, this type of trust can operate in the entire nation, meaning all of the US states plus all of the US territories. So you don't have any type of limitation on where you can operate it, within this country. Now, the next thing is that it's not required to be registered, which is a good thing because you want this trust to remain private, right? You don't want anyone to know the assets that you have inside of a statutory or non-statutory trust, okay? So with that being said, the next category that I want to share with you guys is a revocable trust versus a non-revoke or a irrevocable trust. So when we are talking about revocable versus irrevocable, we are only describing one party, and that one party has what we call irrevocability. So the one party that we are referencing is the grantor. So what we're saying with the grantor is that they have either power and control or they don't. So let's talk about the revocable trust. Now, with the revocable trust, the grantor is able to revoke the trust, meaning that they can terminate the trust at any point in time. With that being said, they are able to actually operate and control the trust. They can remove trustees and beneficiaries. They can make changes to the trust, and they can take back assets that they placed inside of the trust. So because the grantor has so much control, typically the grantor with a revocable trust is actually going to serve as the trustee and the beneficiary as well. So you have one individual that is the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. So because that is the case, this trust is actually seen as that individual's alter ego. So it's not seen as a separate entity from them, it is seen as them. And because it's seen as them, if that individual was to end up in a lawsuit or they were to end up, with creditors coming after them, those creditors can go after the revocable trust, which means that unfortunately your assets are not protected with a revocable trust, okay? And if that revocable trust was to end up in court, then that trust can be pierced. And if it's pierced, then they're going to force you to produce the trust in court. And now that trust is going to become a part of the public records, which means that everyone can search the trust and know what's inside of the trust. So they know the net worth, they know all of the assets, they know who the beneficiaries are. So the trust is no longer private. Okay. Now let's talk about the other type of trust, which is an irrevocable. With an irrevocable trust, right, the grantor has irrevocability, which means that they have no power, no control. They cannot administer the trust. They cannot terminate the trust. They cannot make any changes to the trust. They cannot remove the trustees or the beneficiaries. And if they were to place assets in the trust, they cannot take those assets back. So because they have irrevocability, they cannot be the trustee or the beneficiary. So with an irrevocable trust, those people have to be different, right? They cannot be the same person. So because this trust is an irrevocable trust, it is not seen as their alter ego. It is seen as a total separate entity, okay? Which is good because it's going to operate with its own name and its own EIN number, okay? So with this type of trust, your assets are fully protected because if creditors come after the grantor, they cannot come after the trust because the trust is a separate entity. And if that trust was to end up in court, they would not pierce through an irrevocable trust because of the nature of the contract, okay? So what you need to do is you need to decide what type of trust that you want to create, okay? So these are the steps you want to take when you're creating a trust. First, do your due diligence and see what is the best trust for you and your family, okay? Now, out of all of the categories that I just shared with you guys, if you want your assets to be fully protected from creditors, from, bankruptcies and lawsuits and things of that nature, right? Then you want what we call a bulletproof trust. So a bulletproof trust is where it falls under the right category. So it has all of these characteristics within the trust. So the first one is that it is express in nature. The second one is that it is complex. The third one is that it is discretionary. The fourth one is that it is non-statutory. And the final one is that it is irrevocable. So that is the type of trust where your assets will be fully protected and pretty much bulletproof, okay? Now that you have determined the type of trust that you want to create, let's move on to number two. In number two, you're going to actually create a name for the trust, okay? You can name the trust whatever you want, but avoid these two mistakes. The first is that you do not want to name the trust after yourself, okay? Because the trust is private and you don't want anyone to know that you're associated with the trust. So if your name is Jackie Chan, do not name the trust the Jackie Chan Trust. Okay, that is not going to work for you because it's a dead giveaway. The second thing is that you don't have to have the word trust in the actual name of the entity. Now that you've named the trust, right, you have to appoint the different parties in this contract. So you have the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. So typically you're going to choose a grantor. So the grantor and the trustee are the two people that are associated with the contract. Now, if you want to have full control over the trust, then you're going to appoint yourself as the trustee and you're going to have someone else serve as the grantor. As far as the beneficiaries, those are going to be your children. And then we have what we call a successor trustee. So you need to have a succession plan in place in the event that something happens to you. Meaning, if you decide, that you want to resign, or if you become incapacitated, or if you transition and expire, then you want your successor trustee to be able to pick up where you left off, okay? So that is the individual who's going to take over after you in the event that any of those things happen, okay? So just make sure that that person is at least 18 years or older and they're able to take over as early as tomorrow. So let's move on to number three. In number three, we are actually going to create the actual contract, okay? So here is where you're going to put the terms and conditions, or what we call provisions. Now, one of the provisions that you want to ensure that you have within your trust are spendthrift provisions. The spendthrift provisions are going to put you in a place where you're able to control the money from the grave, which is exactly what you want to do. Because a spendthrift is where you have the beneficiaries, the individuals that did not create the trust or the wealth, but they want to spend it, right? They want to spend all the money that's inside of the trust. So you want to put the right restrictions in place. Now, some of these spendthrift provisions could look like an education restriction where you're telling them that they have to have a certain training or a degree or a college education, something of that nature. You can have an age restriction where you tell them that they have to be 21 years or older before they can receive a distribution, right? You could also control what they spend the distribution on. So you can say, hey, the distribution is not going to be spent on drugs or gambling or anything like that. But you have to be able to invest in stocks, real estate, and your living expenses, right? So you want to put all those stipulations in place. It is so vitally important because if this type of wealth is going to last until the next generation, then you want to be able to, once again, control that money from the grave, okay? Now let's move on to number four. So in number four, we are actually going to get the trust notarized. That's what's going to make the trust legal. And so we can start operating the trust. So once it's legal, the first thing that we are going to do is we're going to open up our trust bank account, okay? So when you're getting the trust notarized, it's going to require two signatures, the grantor and the trustee's signature, and then the notary public is going to sign as a witness. So now that the trust is notarized, it's time to get the bank account. You can actually set up a trust account with any financial institution that actually offers trust accounts. Not every single bank offers a trust account. So you have to do your research and your due diligence to ensure that you're deciding to establish a banking relationship with the right institution, okay? So these could be banks, credit unions, or any other financial firm that offers accounts. The type of accounts can be checking accounts, savings accounts, money market accounts, or even cash management accounts, okay? Now, what you want to bring with you to the bank is you want to bring the certificate of trust, which is proof of identity that the trust exists. So just like how you walk around with proof of identity, which is your driver's license or state ID, the trust also has a certificate that has vital information on it, and that is the proof of identity for the trust, okay? So you're going to bring that with you along with the EIN confirmation letter that you're going to receive from the IRS. The reason why we get an EIN with the IRS is for banking purposes because it is challenging for us to be able to open up a trust bank account without an EIN number, okay? So now that we have opened up our trust fund, we have to actually fund it. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to fund it with whatever dollar amount that you would like. So some banks have a minimum. So some banks are $100, $500, $1,000. It just depends on their policies and procedures, okay? So you'll fund it with whatever the at least whatever the minimum is plus whatever dollar amount that you want to start the trust with, okay? Now, after the trust is funded, then you're going to transfer assets into the trust. All of the assets that you plan on placing into the trust have to be listed in the trust documents. So, for example, real estate, jewelry, insurance policies, stocks and bonds, cryptocurrency, just to name a few, okay? So now that you are at the point where you want to transfer assets, first you list the assets and then you have to do the legal transfer. So for example, let's just say that you have your primary residence, right? So when you bought this house, they gave you a deed. So that means that you're going to have to redeed this property over into the trust. So you have to create a new deed. You have to deed it over from your personal name into the name of the trust. You have to then record that deed with the county recorder's office. And then once it's recorded, now it's going to represent and show on the public records that the new owner of the property is the trust. So that is how that asset is fully protected. If the asset, meaning your house, your primary residence, if it's not in the name of the trust legally through the deed, then it is not protected at all. Okay. So you want to make sure that you go as far as, as this, because this is one of the mistakes that I see a lot of people make. They'll set up the trust contract and they'll never legally transfer the assets into the trust, right? So just avoid that mistake at all cost, okay? So now let's talk about the different things that a trust can actually protect you from. So you want to set up a trust for asset protection as well as privacy, right? So you do not want, society to know what assets that you have, right? And so it's very important that you don't have these assets in your personal name because of things like this, right? So a trust can protect you from bankruptcy, from divorce, from foreclosures, from heavy taxations, from lawsuits, and from probate, just to name a few. So, for example, let's talk about divorce, right? So, a divorce is a transfer of wealth between two individuals, right? So, you have two spouses that they are now in court and they're fighting over their assets. And so, when you are going through a divorce, they're going to include, the court system is going to include everything that's in your personal name, meaning all of your assets and all of your liabilities. The beautiful thing about having a trust is that if you have a trust and you have, like, let's just say a house and cash in there, right? That trust is not you and you are not the trust, which means that that trust cannot be pulled into your divorce. So that means that those assets are protected in the event of a divorce, okay? So just keep that in mind. Now let's talk about lawsuits, right? One thing that I want you to know One thing that I want you to know is that we live in the United States of America, which is a sue-friendly country. Everyone literally wants to sue you, right? Your sibling wants to sue you. Your best friend wants to sue you. Your employer wants to sue you. Your employee wants to sue you. Everyone wants to sue you. And it can literally take one lawsuit for you to lose it all. And you don't want that to happen to you, right? So a trust can actually protect you from a lawsuit, right? Let's just say that you have an LLC, right? A lot of us, we are entrepreneurs and we are running businesses and we have set up an LLC because in our mind, the LLC is the end all be all, right? And so my question to you is if you have an LLC, right, what does LLC stand for? So you guys can come off mute and let me know what you think. What does LLC stand for?
Limited liability company.
Yes, Jazz. Thank you so much. So it's limited liability company, okay? So n you actually hear it in the actual name, right? So let's just say that something happens to the company and they want to sue, right? um and they come after the LLC, right? If you are operating an LLC, right, and it's limited liability, that means that the company has limited liability. So who else do you think has the other half of that liability?
The owner of the company.
Correct. Thank you, Jazz. So the owner of the company is also going to share that liability. And if you're the owner of your business, of the company, then you are at risk because it is just going to take one lawsuit for you to lose it all. You do not want to be the owner on paper. You need protection, okay? You need to have an entity in between you and the LLC. That entity is going to be a trust, okay? So, in the event that somebody wants to sue your business, right? And they come after your business, it is so easy for them to find out who you are. All they have to do is go to the Secretary of State, type in the name of your LLC, and all of your information is readily available. So you don't want to be listed on the public records under your company, okay? So what you need to do is you need to remove yourself as the owner. You need to add the trust as the owner because now moving forward, what is going to happen is um, if anything happens to that business, then they're going to come after the trust and they're not going to come after you personally, right? So for example, if your LLC was to end up in litigation, let's just say that somebody wants to sue your LLC for $500,000, right? And it went to court and now there's a judgment for $500,000. If the LLC doesn't have $500,000 in it, then what's going to happen is they are going to go after the owner, which is you. So now that means that you're putting yourself in a position to where they can garnish your wages, they can garnish all of your bank accounts. They can also go to the extent to where they are going to seize all of your property. So if you have a house, if you have a car, jewelry, artwork, anything like that, they're able to garnish it. So you do not want that to happen, okay? So you need to protect yourself from situations like that because um because a lot of us, we think that we're protected with the LLC, but it's just a tiny little bit of protection. It's a small umbrella, okay? And if a hurricane comes through, you're gonna get blown away. So protect yourself. So let's continue on. Now, the next one I want to talk to you guys about is your primary residence, right? So you have this house, right? You got the white picket fence, you got the dream house with, the kids and the dog and everything, right? And my question to you is, this house is in your personal name. If anything happened to you to where you didn't wake up tomorrow, what do you think is going to happen to this house, right? How do you think this house is going to be transferred from your personal name to your children? So somebody come off mute, let me know what you think.
It, it's gonna go through probate.
Exactly. So that is what's going to happen. You're actually leaving it up to a judge to be able to make the decision of what happens to your house, right? And so that judge doesn't know you. That judge does not know your children. But because you decided not to have your affairs in order, and because you decided to keep that property in your personal name, now it's going through probate. So now let's talk about probate. So the first thing I want to mention is a will, right? A lot of people, they think that the will is the end all be all. When a will is simply a wish list, I will be very honest with you guys, right? So a will is a legal instrument that is designed to be carried out in probate, which means that a will is automatically going to put you in probate, okay? When you are carrying out the will, right? Inside of the will, we're saying um that we want our son to get our house, right? We want our daughter to get our car, things like that, right? And so you are literally just saying, I wish my daughter will get my house. It is a wish list because at the end of the day, it's up to the judge, it's not up to you. But that is what you wish will happen, okay? So a will cannot own anything, okay? But a trust can. Now, everything that you have inside of a will, meaning all of those provisions, can go inside of your trust, and all of those wishes can be carried out by the trust. The difference between the will and the trust is that a trust is an actual living, breathing entity. And a trust is actually designed to live, many decades, right? The trust can live 100 years, right, before it expires. Versus a will. A will cannot own anything. It's not a living, breathing entity. It's simply just an executed wish list, okay? So a lot of people, they make the mistake and they think, oh, I have the house, I have the car, I have the money, I have a will, I'm good, right? And so if that is the case that you're in, right, and anything happens to you where you don't wake up tomorrow, then what's going to happen is because you did not set up a trust, right? And because you had the house, the car, and the cash in your personal name, the state where you are a resident, they're going to create an estate for you. So that means that the government is going to create a living entity for a dead person, okay? And with this estate, right, if your name is John Doe, they're going to call it the John Doe estate. Now they're going to transfer your house, your cash, and your car inside of the estate. And now the estate is going to go straight into probate, okay? And so now that the estate is in probate, right? What's going to happen is it needs to be represented by a probate attorney, and now the court proceedings are going to be carried out. And the first thing that the judge does is the judge is going to cover your liabilities. So whatever debt that you had, meaning your credit card debt, your student loan debt, if you had a car loan, any type of debt that you had, right? The judge is going to carry those things out. Now, one thing that we don't think about is the type of medical bills that we're going to rack up at the end of life, right? Just think about it, right? At the end of life, you might have been sitting in the ICU for 10 days, right? Or you could have been in a nursing home or a rehabilitation center or anything, right? And now that means that you have medical bills, right? Some of these medical bills are $150,000, right? And so those creditors are now going to come after your estate. And one thing that is for sure is Medicare and Medicaid, they want to be reimbursed. Okay. So they are also going to come after your estate. So you have creditors that are coming out of the woodworks, and they're coming after the cash that you had, as well as the assets that you intended on leaving behind. So now that we know that the judge is going to pay off all of our debt, What is going to happen if you don't have enough cash to cover the medical bills, right? You don't have, you were sitting in the ICU, now it's $150,000. You don't have that sitting in your bank account. What the judge is going to do is the judge is going to begin to liquidate your assets. So they're going to sell the car, they're going to sell the house, right? So now you have your children. Your children are now having to fight in court to keep mom and dad's house. So unfortunately, sometimes they fight each other and they fight the court system. So, unfortunately, our children are losing their inheritance. I'm seeing it every single day. And this is avoidable. The only way that you can avoid probate is by setting up a trust and placing those assets into a trust. There is no other way to avoid probate. So, literally, we're all going to end up in probate unless we have a trust. So now let me show you what it looks like for you to go through this process if you have a trust. So let's just say you decided, yes, I have to protect my assets. I have to get my affairs in order. Let me go ahead and set up my trust now while I'm living. So you set up your estate. Then you legally transferred your house, your car, and you opened up that trust fund account and you transfer the money from your personal checking account into the trust fund. So now nothing's in your personal name. Now you didn't wake up tomorrow. What's going to happen is your successor trustee, the person that you decided that is going to take over after you, if you transition and you're the trustee, they're going to pick up where you left off. So they're going to start to operate that trust that same day. And what's going to happen is all of the assets are going to remain intact because they're in the trust. The trust didn't transition, you transitioned. The trust is designed to outlive you. So that trust is going to be around for 100 years. So the assets are protected. The beneficiaries are going to continue to benefit from the trust and from the assets, right? And this whole entire probate process is completely avoided because you did not have any assets in your personal name. Now, because you didn't have any assets in your personal name, right? Those creditors have nothing to go after because they cannot go after your trust. You are not the trust and the trust is not you. So with that being the case, that debt, that debt dies with you, which is exactly what you want, right? Those companies like the hospital, they're going to have to discharge that debt because they have nothing to go after, right? So that is the process that you want for your family to go through and for you to go through, right? So avoid probate at all costs. So let's dive right back into the presentation. We got a couple more slides and then we're going to land this plane. So let's talk about the wealth building formula, you guys. I have three pillars here. The first one is structure, the second one is credit, and the third one is invest. Now, what I want to do in the next couple of minutes is I want to teach you guys the different strategies that you can take in order to build wealth with a trust, okay? Once again, right? A trust can do anything that a human can do. So let's look at it. Now, let's start with structure. First and foremost, if you don't have a trust within your structure, you need to get restructured right away. Now, the second thing you need to be aware of is that you do not want to place all of your assets in one trust, okay? That is equivalent to you placing all of your eggs in one basket. What happens if you drop the basket, right? So always have that in mind, okay? So let's talk about, I have three different types of trust here that I want to briefly educate you guys on. The first one is a business trust, the second one is a family trust, and the third one is a tax-exempt nonprofit trust. Now, with the business trust, right, this trust, when you set it up, it is designed to either conduct business or to manage businesses, okay? So you're going to use it either two different ways. You have to determine which way you want to use it, okay? So you're either going to conduct business, meaning I'm going to establish a company and I'm going to operate it. So I have a real estate company, a e-commerce company, any type of company that you want, an Amazon affiliate company, whatever it is that you want, right? So that's the first way. The second way is for it to actually hold other legal entities, meaning that the business trust is going to own the LLC or the corporation. Okay, so now it's going to be acting as a holding company. Okay. This is the example that I was telling you guys earlier, which is if you have an LLC, right? You do not want to be the owner of the LLC. So what's going to happen is you're going to establish a business trust. The business trust is now going to be the owner of the LLC. That is that layer of protection between you and the business. Because if anything happens to the business, they're going to go after the business trust. They're not going to go after you. But because you're the trustee of the business trust, you have full control over the business trust and the LLC, which is what you want, okay? So let's just say that the LLC is generating money. It just generated $100,000, right? That $100,000 can be distributed to the business trust because the business trust is the owner of the LLC. So if you want to distribute it, you can. And so now that $100,000 now is going to be transferred to the business trust, okay? And the business trust just now received income of $100,000. Now, the thing about these entities that I absolutely love is that you actually get to spend the money first and then you're taxed on the leftovers. And that is so powerful. So I'm going to repeat it again. You're going to spend the money first and then you are taxed on the leftovers. So what does that look like? Well, you just received $100,000 into the business trust. So now you got to spend the money. So that could be operating expenses, administrative expenses, management expenses, right? Maintenance, anything, right? So all of those are called operating expenses. So what does it look like to operate the business trust? So all of those things are a tax deductible. So that means that we get to write all of that off. So let's just say that we're writing off $30,000, right? Out of the $100,000 that came in, 30,000 we spent on operating expenses. So now we have $70,000 that's left. So what are we going to do with that $70,000? Because a trust is taxed, right? So a business trust is a for-profit entity, a family trust is a for-profit entity. So the tax bracket is between 10% upwards of 37%. So that means that you're going to have to pay a pretty penny in taxes. But one of the beautiful things about the business trust is that it has beneficiaries and it can do a distribution. So when it comes to the distribution, what you're going to do is that $70,000 that you have sitting in there that you have to pay taxes on, you're going to distribute it. So now you distributed the $70,000 to the beneficiary. So the way that we actually structure this is we will make the beneficiary of the business trust the family trust. The reason why we do that is because the business trust is designed to generate the money and then it transfers it to the family trust so that the family trust can spend the money on the family. Okay. So that $70,000 is distributed to the beneficiary, which is the family trust. So now the 70,000 went straight to the family trust. On the business trust level, we had $100,000. 30,000 went to operating expenses, 70,000 went to a distribution. So 100% of that money, the whole $100,000 is tax deductible, which means that now you have a 0% tax liability. So you're done paying taxes and the taxes is zero. So now let's move down to the family trust. Now that we're at the family trust level, right? We just received income of $70,000. That income, which is distribution income, that income, we have to pay taxes on it, right? And so what's going to happen is we get to spend the money first and then we're taxed on the leftovers, which means that we are going to spend the money on whatever the expenses looks like for the family. So you might have a mortgage, you might have utilities, property taxes, gas, tuition, books, grocery, all of these things, right? So that is what it costs in order to maintain the family. So let's just say it costs 60,000, right? So now we're going to deduct 60,000 from the 70,000. And so now that's written off and we have $10,000 left. So we would have to pay 10% on the $10,000, which is only $1,000, right? But the second thing that we can do is a contribution. So we already learned about the distribution and now you can do a contribution. So this is where the IRS will allow you to do a charitable contribution of up to 60%. So that means that you can actually donate the $10,000 to a charity of your choice, which is why we are going to have a nonprofit within our organization, because we can actually donate that 10,000 to our nonprofit, okay? For our philanthropic endeavors, right? For our charitable purposes. So the 10,000 has now gone to the tax exempt nonprofit trust. So on the family trust level, right? Your children are the beneficiaries and you have just written off 60,000 in expenses and 10,000 in charitable contributions, which means that you wrote off the whole 70,000, so you have a 0% tax liability. So now we're going to move down to the tax exempt nonprofit trust. So this is what we call a 508c1a designated trust. Now, certain labels that you can use for this type of trust is faith-based organization, FBO. You can label it as a church. You can label it as a school. You can label it as a ministry or any other type of auxiliary. So with this type of trust, it is tax exempt from having to pay federal taxes to the IRS. And the reason why it's tax exempt is because there is a mandatory exception to not having to file for a 501c3. So it's automatically tax exempt because it is operating as a faith-based organization. Now, this is all possible because of the separation between church and state. So as long as it's operating for those specific reasons. Now, those reasons can be religious, or charitable, or educational. Okay. So those would be the three different purposes for the organization. Now, the IRS will allow you to donate up to 60% of your annual gross income to this organization. Okay. So that means that let's just say you're a W-2 income earner, right? And you make $100,000 for the year. Well, the IRS is going to allow you to donate $60,000 to the trust. And then at that point, it's going to be a complete write-off. And now you're going to be taxed on 40,000 versus 100,000 of your annual gross income. So you're going to be saving thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on taxes, because a lot of us, we are giving away half of our money to the government. Let's just be honest, especially if we're in states like California and New York, right? They're literally taking half. And so you want to be able to put these type of entities in place and get restructured so that you can keep more of your money, so that you can then allocate it somewhere else. You need to be able to put that money to work. So let's move on. So now we're going to talk about OPM, which is other people's money. So what I need you to know is that the business trust can actually establish business credit, which is extremely powerful, because now what you're going to do is you're going to be able to put yourself in a position to where you can leverage a second credit profile. Why? Because the business trust has an EIN and it's going to build credit off of that EIN. And if you're building business credit, you are going to qualify for higher lines of credit. So instead of you getting a credit card for 10,000, they'll give you a credit card for 100,000. So that is why you want to be able to do that, because you need to put yourself in a position to where you're leveraging the banks. You need to leverage their money because the banks are leveraging you, right? When you get paid, your paycheck goes where? It goes straight into the bank. And then what does the bank do with it? The bank is going to pimp out your money. So the bank is going, we think that our money is sitting there, right? But in all actuality, they are lending it out, okay? Because the system is what we call a fractional reserve system, which means that they only need a fraction of what's inside there. So you see $5,000, but what they really have is a fraction of that, okay? And so they are pimping out that money and they are lending it to, people like us for credit cards and car loans and student loans and mortgages and all this stuff. And they are getting rich, right? And so we need to adopt that same system and we need to borrow money and park it somewhere where it's working so that we can get rich as well. Okay. So it is a simple process. All right. So put yourself in that position. Now let's move on to the next one, which is invest. So these are my two favorite assets that I need you to acquire when you set up your trust, okay? So the first one is a life insurance policy. A lot of people think that life insurance is supposed to be used when they're dead. But in all actuality, life insurance is supposed to be used when you are living. That's why it's called life insurance and not death insurance, okay? Why? Because there's so many living benefits to life insurance. So let me just drop a few, right? So the first thing is you have protection. So your money is protected inside of a life insurance. It is liquid, so you have that liquidity. Some of the life insurances have long-term care, so meaning that if anything happens to you between now and before you pass away, right? If you need any type of long-term care, right, then they'll pay for it, right? Let's just say you're diagnosed with a terminal illness, then they will give you majority of your death benefit, right? And so those are good things. Now, another thing is that there's a death benefit, right? And so that means that your beneficiary is going to receive a certain amount. Let's just say it's $2 million, right? They're going to receive $2 million when you transition. That is extremely powerful. But let me tell you about the most powerful component, especially with this type of life insurance, okay? So this type of life insurance, the one that you see on the screen, it's called an IUL, and it stands for Index Universal Life, okay? And so with this one, you're actually going to accumulate cash value. That is my favorite component, right? Is that one, you're going to be generating cash value. So how does that work is when you have this life insurance policy, right, you have two buckets. So one bucket is for your death benefit. In the event that something happens to you, they pay out that whole entire amount. The second bucket is your cash that you're accumulating. Now, how do you accumulate the cash? Well, every single time that you make a premium payment, the carrier, they're going to take a certain percentage. So let's just say that you structured your policy to where it's an 80-20 split. So 20% or $20 is going to go to the life insurance carrier, and that is for the cost of insurance. And then 80% or $80 is going to go to your cash value, right? So you're paying a $100 premium every single month and you're accumulating $80 in cash value every single month, right? So that's beautiful because, like I said, this is a liquid asset. So if you need to be able to tap into the cash value, you can do that, which is another beautiful thing. But with this type of policy, the one that you see here, right? There are hundreds of different types of policies. The one that I'm talking about now is an index universal life. So with this type of policy, it's actually going to earn compound interest. And what is compound interest, right? So that means that it's going to be earning interest through the stock market through a specific indice. So you see the word index. The index is referring to an indice in the stock market. So the stock market has many different indices. It has the Dow Jones, it has the NASDAQ, and then it also has the S&P 500. So my favorite is the S&P 500. It stands for Standard & Poor's 500, and what it does is it tracks the top 500 companies in this country. So that is your, your Apple, your Amazon, your Facebook, things like that, right? The top 500. So what's happening here is that your money that you are accumulating inside of your cash value is going to now earn interest. But the most beautiful component is that it's going to earn it risk-free because your money is not invested directly into the market. What's going to occur is the carrier is going to mirror the market. So that means that whatever is inside of your cash value is going to match and earn whatever the index does. So let's just say that the S&P 500 does 9%. What's going to happen is the carrier is going to give you a 9% return on your cash value. So your cash value is not only going to accumulate, but it's going to earn compound interest. So now it's working for you and it's earning 9%. So this is then going to become a snowball effect to where your money is doubling, tripling, and quadrupling. Okay. So me, I have 5 life insurance policies, and I'll tell you a little bit about them in just a moment. Okay. So with that being said, the way that you incorporate it with the trust is that the trust is going to be the owner of your life insurance policy. The trust is going to pay the premiums every single month. And the trust is going to be the beneficiary of your life insurance policy. Because if anything happens to you, then that death benefit of $2 million is going to go to the trust, which is what you want. Okay. So once again, that is one of my favorite assets when it comes to the wealth building formula. The second one that I want to tell you guys about is real estate. I absolutely love real estate. Real estate is my favorite thing of all times. That is my first business. And you can actually become financially free with real estate. That is how I was able to become financially free. So I come from very humble beginnings, right? I was living in an abandoned building, right? Me and my family, we were squatters. And so I knew that real estate was my way out because it gives you passive income, right? And so you need to put yourself in a position to where you are parking your money in a place to where it's going to give you income that you don't have to work for. Because a lot of us, we have bought into this lie of what society wants for us. So society is telling us that we have to work for 40 hours a week for 40 years, and then we get to retire when we're 65 years old, right? And then at 65 is when you're going to have financial freedom, location freedom, and time freedom, right? And so that's what we have been programmed to think and to do, right? And we have been programmed since kindergarten, right? Since birth, right? For us to go to an institution for 8 hours and then we come home and we watch TV and we eat dinner and we talk to our family for a couple minutes and then we go to sleep and then we start it all over again tomorrow, right? Now, you can unsubscribe to that system, right? And so that's going to take a mindset shift for you to then think, how can I actually put myself in a position to where I can park my money in places where it's going to grow, where it's going to bring back friends, where every single dollar is going to bring back a quarter, 10 cents, 15 cents, right? That is the mindset shift that we're going to have to take, right? I was able to retire myself at 31 years old. So I gave myself a deadline, right? Because I'm not even gonna lie to you, like my career was hard. It's not easy working 5 hours, excuse me, 5 days a week, 12-hour shifts. It's not easy, right? And so I gave myself a deadline and I said, I'm gonna get out of this career in 10 years. And the reason why I gave myself that deadline is because I witnessed, a lot of very challenging things. So one of my coworkers, right, that I love dearly, um, she had been a nurse for 40 years, right? And so at this time, she was 65 years old. So last time I checked, it's time to retire, right? So she's 65 years old. And at that point, we were at work one day and she was exhausted. And so, me being young in my 20s, I'm having to help her, right? So, I have to go and do a lot of the heavy lifting for her patients because she couldn't do it. And so, I looked at her and I saw how exhausted she was. And I'm exhausted in my 20s, so I can't imagine. So, I looked at her and um, I said, Miss Audrey, when are you going to retire? You 65. Like you made it. You made it to the retirement age that they tell us. When are you going to retire? And so she told me, she's like, well, I'm not ready to retire. And at that point, I was so sad for her because she said, I'm going to wait until I'm 67 and a half. And I didn't understand. And I'm like, what do you mean you're going to wait until you're 67 and a half? Why? She said, because if I wait until I'm 67 and a half, Social Security is going to give me an extra $300 a month. And I was shocked when she said that. And I said, so you're going to work for another 2.5 years so you can get an extra $300 a month. And she's like, yes. And I said, okay. I said, well, I'll be here to help you. And so when I had that pivotal moment, I said to myself, that will not be me. I will not be in this career for 40 years, basically running down my body, um, and then retiring and depending on the system, depending on Social Security, depending on the government. So that's when I had the mindset shift that I need to get a second stream of income and I need to get real estate. And unfortunately, one day after work, Miss Audrey, she pulled out of the parking lot at the hospital and she hit the tree right in front of the emergency room and she died on impact. So she never even made it to retirement. And I don't want any of you to be like Miss Audrey. And I didn't want to be like Miss Audrey. So we have to make it our duty to do the things that we need to do in order to shift our mind, in order to put the money in the places that it needs to be put in, meaning investments, so that we can take back our time, so that we can take back our freedom, so that we can take back our livelihood, right? Because my whole mission at that time was I want to spend time with my baby. He's 1 year old, then 2 years old, then 3 years old. And I'm like, he's just growing, and my parents are helping me and they're raising him, and I'm just here at work. I see him 2 days out of the week. So, um, Yeah, we need to unsubscribe to what society is telling us. So, anyways, let me get back on track here. So sorry, guys. Let me get back on track. So, real estate, right? So real estate was my way out. Today I have a seven-figure portfolio, and I'm very proud of it. And that is because that's because I use my nursing dollars in order to invest in real estate. Now, what I will tell you is that you do not need any money in order to invest in real estate. And I'm telling you that from the bottom of my heart because I have done it. Okay. My first property, the one that I was telling you about earlier, right? Someone else put up 100% of the money. And when I say someone else is the lenders, right? And so you need to use OPM, other people's money, the bank's money, the mortgage company's money, the lender's money, right? You need to use their money in order for you to get the assets that are cash flowing, okay? So let me just give you a quick scenario. So, what you can do is a trust can actually take out a mortgage. A trust can own real estate, okay? A trust can get a home equity line of credit, okay? So there's no limitations to what a trust can do in real estate, okay? Now, the trust is going to get a rental property, okay? Let's just say that it is a triplex, right? So you got three doors, it's a triplex. It is an investment property. So what you're going to do is you're going to get a DSCR. So the DSCR is a debt service coverage ratio loan that is for entities that is going to purchase investment properties that's non-owner occupied, okay? Now, this DSCR is going to be able to lend you up to 80% of the purchase price. So there you go. You just already got 80%, right? So now we need to go find the other 20%. So the way that we're going to find the 20% is because if you backtrack, we talked about business credit, right? And so if you intentionally build that business credit, you're going to qualify for credit cards of 50,000, 100,000, 20,000, 30,000, right? So let's just say that we got a credit card for 50,000, right? What you're going to do is you're going to liquidate that credit card. Okay. So now that you've liquidated the credit card, that $50,000, you stripped it, it's in your bank account. So the first thing that you're going to do, and let me test you guys to see if y'all still awake because um I don't want nobody falling asleep here. So, what is the first thing that you guys are going to do with the $50,000? This is a pop quiz.
And yourself.
Pay yourself. I love that. Okay.
Mhm.
So where is the money gonna go? Does anybody know where the money's gonna go?
The trust banking account.
Yeah, so it does. It goes into the bank account, and then after the bank account, what are you gonna do with the 50,000?
Life
You're gonna
insurance policy.
Correct. So this is what you want to do, okay? This is what you want to do. So you want to put yourself in that position to where you're going to pay yourself first before you move that money anywhere else, right? So the 50,000 just came into your bank account. Instead of you going and sending it straight to the real estate company for the down payment, you're going to move it into your life insurance policy. Because if you move it into your life insurance policy, now your cash value is going to go up by 50,000, right? Or whatever the percentage is. Let's just say is going to go up by 48, right? 48,000, right? So it's going up by 48,000, right? So now you have $48,000 that's parked inside of that cash value, right? And then what is going to happen is that that $48,000 is going to accumulate compound interest. So now it's going to be working for you, right? It's going to be working for you and it's going to be earning 9%, 10%, 11%, whatever the market is doing. So whatever the S&P 500 is doing, right? So now you've already parked it in one place, okay? So you parked the 50,000 into the IUL, but now you need to be able to use it for your down payment for real estate. So what you're going to do is you're going to contact the carrier. You're going to let them know, hey, I need a loan. And they are going to look at your cash value and they're going to say absolutely yes, right? You got the reserves. So they're going to say, yes, we're going to give you a loan from our money, from our reserves. So the carrier is not going to touch the 50,000 that you have inside of the cash value. What they're going to do is they're going to issue you a loan from their bank account, right? And it's going to be a direct deposit into your bank account, right? And so now they direct deposit the money into your bank account now that you can use it. So now what you're going to do is you're going to use it for the down payment for real estate. And so now you close on the real estate, right? So the beautiful thing is that you got 50,000 from the credit card. You liquidated it. You moved the cash into your cash value into your IUL so that it could work there first. Then you borrowed it back out and then you parked it into real estate. So you mean to tell me that that $50,000 is working for you twice? Right? It's working for you in your IUL, making 9-10%, and now it's working for you inside of the real estate, right? Because you have cash on cash return, is working inside of the real estate, cash flowing, earning rental income. Okay, that is extremely powerful because you've just double dipped, right? And so now you have two streams of passive income here. Okay, so now we have the real estate, right? So we closed on the property. Now it's the first of the month, and now we are collecting rent. So we're going to collect $2,000 per door. There's 3 doors. That's what, 2, 4, 6, $6,000, right? So now we just got $6,000. What are we going to do with the $6,000? Somebody come off mute. Let me know. Come on, come on, come on. What are we going to do with the $6,000? What's the first thing we're going to do with the $6,000?
Put into the cash value of life insurance.
Absolutely. That is the first thing that you're going to do with the $6,000. Thank you. You are going to pay yourself first. So everything that I'm telling you is going to take a mindset shift, okay? So we need to put ourselves in a position to where we are paying ourselves first, right? Especially if we want time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom, especially if we want to get out of the rat race, especially if we want to get out of, you know, living paycheck to paycheck, right? So we need to be able to do that. So we just put that 6,000 into the life insurance, right? And now our cash value went up by 6,000. We're going to go ahead and borrow that money out. Let's just say that we can borrow out, 5,000. So now we borrowed out the 5,000 so that we can pay the credit card and the mortgage company. Whatever's left over is going to sit inside of the trust fund. Okay. So that is a process that you want to take to where the trust is going to be able to sustain itself. That is what you want. You want the trust to sustain itself. You do not want to be pouring in your W-2 income into the trust, okay? So this is extremely powerful, right? So once again, I said it takes a mindset shift, right? For example, with the banks, right? Using other people's money. A lot of people don't know that the bank's number one asset is life insurance. The Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase Bank, their number one asset that they hold is BOLI, BOLI, bank-owned life insurance. Okay? So if their number one asset is life insurance policies, what do you think your number one asset should be? Life insurance policies. Thank you, Miss Butler. I see it right all over your face. Love it. She get it. She get it. So life insurance policies, that is what you want. Okay. Remember, I told you guys I have 5 policies. Why? Because I have 5 people in the trust. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay. So you need to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything, right? That is what stewardship is, where you are a good steward of your wealth and of the assets, right? You're making sure that everything is conserved and preserved, right? Versus ownership. A lot of us right now, we're operating in ownership, right? Where we are so proud to be the owners of our, houses and cars and stuff, right? When you have to understand, right, that this house that you live in, right? This house that is your number one asset. Generally, our primary residence is our number one asset, right? What you need to understand is that this house is still going to be here when you transition. So if you don't wake up tomorrow, the house is still going to be here. So you have to understand that what you want, your truest desires, is for you to actually control the asset, control the house, right? You want to be able to control the house while you're living, right? Ownership, a lot of us, society told us, be the owner of your house, your car, your bank account, right? We need to get away from that programming, right? And we need to move into stewardship where we're thinking, okay, the trust owns it and I control it. So I control the house. And I'm going to control this house until the day that the good Lord calls me back, okay? So that's the number one goal, but we don't know that. And so we need to be able to operate in stewardship. Now, has anyone ever asked themselves, how am I actually going to transfer this wealth? Because I'm walking around here talking about I'm building generational wealth, but I don't have the tools to build generational wealth. I'm walking around here talking about I'm building generational wealth, but I don't know how I'm going to transfer any of these assets. I don't have a plan in place, right? So, one thing that I want you to be aware of is that when it comes to transferring the wealth, right, you're going to set up a trust. The trust is going to then establish TCUs. TCUs stands for Trust Certificate Units. Trust Certificate Units are just like stock certificates. They represent beneficial interest in the trust, just like a stock certificate represents ownership interest in a corporation. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to distribute those TCUs to your children. Okay. And then that is how the wealth is going to be transferred. So for example, let's just say that I'm one of your beneficiaries and you give me 20 TCUs. That means I have 20% of beneficial interest. If the trust fund is worth $1 million, I have my TCUs are now equivalent to $200,000 worth of units. So that is how we're going to transfer it, because now my TCUs are going to go to my children. My children's TCUs are going to go to their children. That is how the money is going to last many generations into the future, because you already have a succession plan. Okay. So the TCUs are going to be passed down the lineage, okay, to your descendants and to their descendants and to their descendants. These are what we call heirs, right? So the next thing that I want to tell you guys about is preservation of wealth. Because a lot of us, we don't even think, we're so focused on making the money that we never even think, how am I going to preserve the money? How many times have we seen it to where these celebrities and famous people, they blow the money in their lifetime, or their children blow the money? They went from a mansion to living on the streets. Why do you think that happens? That happens because they did not have the right tools. I guarantee you they didn't have a trust. How many times have we seen it to where they ended up in probate, right? So you need to be able to have the tools for preservation, which are the trust and life insurance, right? Because you have to understand that the trust has many assets. The trust has a bank account, so there's FDIC. The trust has a house, so there's homeowners insurance. The trust has a car, so there's car insurance, right? So what you need to do is the trust needs to also ensure what we call the human assets. The human assets are you. Are you, which is the trustee, as well as the beneficiaries, as well as the future beneficiaries. Why? Because if anything happens to you, the trust is devastated. And so the trust needs to be compensated for that loss if anything happens to you. So that means that the death benefit is going to go to the trust, which is what you want. So if anything happens to you, that death benefit goes straight to the trust. Remember, your death benefit is $2 million. So that $2 million is going straight to the trust fund, and the trust is now replenished with $2 million in the bank account. So you as the trustee, you're going to take out a policy on yourself and on the beneficiaries and on the future beneficiaries. Those future beneficiaries, we call them trust fund babies. Why? Because those babies are born into a trust organization. As soon as that baby is born, the trustee, once that baby turns at least 30 days old, the trustee is going to take out a policy on that baby. And so now the trust is going to pay the premiums, right? And so now the trust is paying $100 a month, $100 a month, $100 a month. Now this trust fund baby is going to grow up. So let's just say the trust fund baby is now 18 years old, right? And so they're like, okay, I'm going to college. I need a car. I need this. I need that, right? And so they can clearly go down to the dealership. They can pull their credit. They can get into a high interest car loan, paying $1,000 a month. Or because they're a trust fund baby, they can actually go to the trust and they can ask the trustee for a loan. And so trustees and beneficiaries can give loans and receive loans to the trust. So now the trustee's like, okay, you need a car, 30,000, write you a check, hand it straight to the beneficiary. So now the beneficiary needs to be responsible. So the beneficiary is going to pay back that loan. And so the beneficiary is going to start paying the trust $300 a month plus a little bit of interest. So now it's a win-win situation, right? But let's just say that the beneficiary decides that they don't want to pay the trust anymore. Well, they defaulted on that loan, but it was a risk-free loan. The reason being it was a risk-free loan is because the money did not originate from the trust fund. The money actually originated from their life insurance policy, from their IUL. So when the minute that that trust fund baby requested a loan for $30,000, the trustee contacted the carrier and requested a loan for $30,000. The carrier looked at all that cash value that had been accumulating and compounded for the last 18 years and was like, yes, direct deposit. The money was placed right into the trust fund, and that is how the trustee was able to issue out that check. So because it is a risk-free loan, the reason being is because that money is going to be deducted from that beneficiary's death benefit. So meaning that when that trust fund baby transitions and they have a death benefit that accumulated to $5 million, it's going to be $5 million minus 30,000. And all of that money is going to go into the trust. So that is what preservation of wealth looks like. And it takes you being structured the right way. So if you don't have a trust, you need to set up a trust. Now, let's move on. These are the books that I recommend. I recommend What Would the Rockefellers Do? That is a really good book teaching you about the marriage between a trust and life insurance. It's not a game. The next one is The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2. It teaches you about trusteeship, how to operate. The next one is Family Wealth. It teaches you how to run your family like a business. All of us need to be running our family like a business, meaning that I am the CEO of my family. My spouse is the CFO of the family. Our children are secretaries of the family. That is how all families should be operating. And the last one is the Complete Book of Trust, which teaches you about the different types of trust. Now, what I want to show you is A quick testimony from one of our community members that took action on the information that I provided tonight.
Why I'm here. I was sued. I lost everything. And when I say everything, I'm talking about a $700,000 house. I'm talking about 4 vehicles. I'm talking about my bank account. I'm talking about my life savings. I believed in having 6 months of expenses put up, saved up just in case anything happened, lost a career and stuff like that. All of that was gone. And there was no protection for me. Then I had my third bout with cancer. I haven't had any income since 2020, since COVID. As I told you, I think yesterday, I've been looking for a way to protect myself because I have children that are going to depend on me. So I would encourage anyone that would listen to anything that has been taught and said by you, please, 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 if you work hard to gain assets, do whatever you can do to protect your assets. Why do you think they've hid this from us for so long? Why do you think they were the only ones that were saying trust fund babies? It was because they were the only ones who were privileged to know this, who was privy to this knowledge. Now we have it through Christina. And I thank you for your level of knowledge and for not being a gatekeeper and for giving us what we need to know in order to make this happen. So please, 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 if you endeavor to get anything in this world and to keep anything in this world, please, please, please protect it. Get your trusts. And I have no reason other than my knowledge and what I've been through. But the only reason I'm here is because I've been through it. So I would encourage anyone.
All right. So it's important to take action and to protect yourself because it just takes one lawsuit for you to lose it all. And I will tell you that majority of us, almost all of us on this call, we're walking around here thinking that we're never going to get sued. And you work so hard for your house and for the cash money that you have in the bank account for you to allow one mistake for you to lose everything. So you don't want that to be you. So let me show you another gentleman that took action on the information that we shared tonight.
Well, kudos to you all. Again, Christina, it's been a wonderful experience. I've been looking at your videos on YouTube for a while. And, there are a number of people offering trust these days. And, I guess that's the big thing, don't own anything, control everything. That kind of, I didn't say it correctly, but that is the sentiment. And so it seems like the playing field is being leveled now from the rich and people who weren't privy to this information. So thank you for being such a great asset to a community that didn't have this information. And you made it so simple. Thank you for the recordings. Thank you for the step-by-step instructions. Things that we can go back and look at. So we do appreciate you. And thank you, Mondo. That was a great explanation of infinite banking. I know a number of people are talking about that, but they make it so complex. And his presentation was nice and succinct and very informative. So this has been an overall great experience. I definitely will recommend you to others.
So you have to understand that a trust fund is the most powerful entity in the entire world. So every single continent operates within trust, okay? So know that because a trust is going to be a solution for you, right? It's going to be your new way of conducting business. It's going to be your new way of saving taxes, right? It's going to be your new way of protecting your assets and having a plan in place so that your children are not losing their inheritance. So you need to treat this like it's a big business, right? You need to treat this like you running Amazon and Facebook, right? Not like some small mom and pop shop, because this is not what that is, right? This is your legacy that we're talking about. And so you need to have that solid foundation. A lot of us, we have built houses without a solid foundation. Our foundation is soft. And it just takes one hurricane to blow us away. And so we don't want to be like that anymore. So now it's time to strengthen our foundation so that we can endure anything and everything, because you never know, right? So let's work together, you guys. I do have a program where I teach you step by step how to actually set everything up for yourself and your family. So you have three options here if you want to get into the program. So the first one is do it yourself, where you're able to get into our course, okay? Our course, it has 43 video modules, and what you're going to do is you're going to actually watch the training modules, and then you're going to get access to the templates. And with these templates, you're going to be able to create your own trust, okay? So the templates that we provide you with is the unincorporated business trust, the family trust, and the tax exempt nonprofit trust. The three trusts that we spoke about in the wealth building formula. Okay. So you guys get lifetime access to the actual program, which means that you can set this up. You have, you have access forever. So if you want to do this in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the line, you want to set up another trust, you can. We also provide you with resources and ebooks. So all the books that I just mentioned, we give you those books in an electronic form. And some of those books, if you look them up on Amazon, hundreds of dollars, okay? As far as the resources, every single thing that you might need for your trust, we give it to you. Meaning that if you want to transfer your house into the trust, we give you the quit claim deed. If you want to file taxes, we give you the 1041 form. If you want to open up a bank account, we show you the steps that you need to take and give you the paperwork, okay? So we also have a Facebook community that's private and a private Telegram chat. This is where you get to interact with our community members, okay? So we have over 2,200 trustees in our community that are in the same city and state that you're in. And so these are like-minded individuals. So some of them have been in the program for years. They already have their houses and cars and bank accounts and building credit and everything in their trust. And so you get access to these individuals, which is absolutely powerful. Okay. So the course is only $997. Now, the second option is if you want to do our live workshop. So it is on Zoom and we show up live, and it's for 5 days. So it's Monday through Friday from 11 in the morning to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I will be here as well as two other educators. And we are going to teach you all of these things step by step. So we're going to hold your hand through the whole entire process, okay? It's like being back in university. So Monday, we focus on the business trust. So what I do is I break down every single paragraph. So I'm going to go through every section and every provision of the actual trust, right? Because one thing that I saw throughout the years is that what sets apart people from success and failure is that they don't know how to operate a trust. So you can go ahead and think that you can figure this thing out, right? Where you can put all these random pieces together, right? But when people set up the trust, they're so fearful that they don't even know how to use it. So they're like scared to put their house into the trust. They're scared to go in and get a credit card. They're scared to go and open up a bank account. Why? Because they don't feel confident, because they don't know what they're doing, right? And so you want to get properly trained, but that training is going to entail you actually knowing what's inside of the trust, right? You have to know and understand. Why? Because you're the one operating it, because you're the trustee. So you need to be able to, one, build up that confidence, and two, know for sure that you can operate this trust efficiently and effectively. And so the way that you're going to do that is by getting properly trained so that you know what's the contents of the trust. So I need to know what's inside of the trust so I can operate it the right way. And that's why we break down every single paragraph. And then we answer your questions on the spot. You're going to have a lot of questions. So instead of you waiting days and weeks, you need your answers right away. right? So that's just on Monday, right? On Tuesday, we focus on the family trust. So we go through the same structure where we break down the paragraphs and we dive into Q&A. On Wednesday, we go through the 508 tax exempt nonprofit trust. Then I show you guys how to become ordained if you want to operate it like a ministry. And then I show you how to get your tax exempt EIN number. So the beautiful thing about being in this environment is that people are asking good questions that you didn't even know that you wanted to know. And so now that you are in the room with like-minded individuals, you're going to learn more. Trust me. Now on Thursday, we focus on OPM. Remember, in the wealth building formula, what did we say? You need to be able to leverage other people's money. So we're going to teach you how to do that. Why? Because we've done it. So what happens is we give you a list of banks. We show you the steps that you need to take in order to open up a bank account. We assist you with having a board meeting, right? Yes, you have to have meetings for your trust, right? And then we show you how to document how much you're going to fund the trust with using promissory notes. And then the last thing is our educator, which is our fund manager, comes in and teach you how to get the money from the banks. So he teaches you how to establish the business credit as well as how to get the funding, right, from all of these banks, right? And then we dive into Q&A. And then the very last day, which is Friday, we focus on assets, right? We focus on asset protection because that's the whole reason why you're here. And so I'm going to show you how to transfer your house into the trust, how to transfer your car into the trust, how to transfer your business like your LLCs or your corporations into the trust. So we give you all the templates, paperwork, and the procedures that you need to take, where you need to go to document everything. And then our CPA comes in, and our CPA is going to teach you about trust taxes. Remember all the tax strategies that we just mentioned? In the wealth building formula, he's going to teach you step by step, right? How to fill out that 1041 form, answer all of your tax questions, okay? So like I said, it's a very thorough, robust program, and you get lifetime access. So if you go with the Done With You, with the workshop, you still get access to the course and the Facebook and the ebook and the Telegram chat and everything. But you get that sense of security to know that you've done things the right way. And so the workshop is only $2,500. And then the last option is Done For You, where my team and I will do it for you, right? So if you don't want to go through the extent of setting up all three of your trusts, applying for your EINs and transferring your assets, then you will have it done for you. So that's typically for people who have a lot of assets, or they have a lot of businesses, or they just, they're not tech savvy. They don't have a lot going on a lot of free time to be able to do this. So we give you individualized support. We customize everything for you. And you get private sessions. So the Done For You is only $7,500. So you guys are able to pick whichever one option is for you. And you can go to the website. So the website is wealthytrustee.com. And then you can also send us an email. So I want to quickly show you what a trust looks like. So this is just an example of one of our trust templates. So everything that you see in red is what you're going to be customizing, okay? So remember I told you I break down every single paragraph so that you can understand what's inside of the trust, which is the most important thing, okay? Now this is what the actual program looks like. So this is the online course, and initially you're going to learn about the trust entities. So you learn what is a trust, and you learn the different parties, the grantor, trustee, beneficiaries, successors, protectors, the benefits, and the types. Then you learn how to set up the tax-exempt ministry trust. Then you learn how to set up the family trust. You learn how to set up the business trust. Then we go into tax strategies, okay? So how to operate tax exempt, how to differentiate between the for-profit and the nonprofit entities. And then we dive into asset protection, where you're going to take an inventory of your assets so that you know which assets you have. And those assets are either going to go inside of the trust, or the assets that don't qualify to go inside of the trust. You need to know that. So then you'll learn how to open up your bank accounts, brokerage accounts, and how to transfer the house, the car, the insurance policies, the businesses, and how to have board meetings. Okay, those meetings are so important. Then we dive into wealth creation, where we teach you how to build the business credit that you need for funding, and then how to invest it in the stock market, and how to do the infinite banking with the life insurance policies. And then we teach you about the legacy crest, and then you have your resources and your ebooks. So that is it, you guys. I want to open up the floor for Q&A just in case you guys have any questions. I know that this was a lot of information in a short period of time, and I'm sorry that I wasn't able to go through every single thing, but I'm glad that right now you guys are at least put in a place to where you can now do your research and think to yourself, hey, do I need to set up a trust? Is it important for me, for my family, for the assets, for the children, for the grandchildren? Okay. So anybody have any questions? Jazz has a question.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Christina. I really do appreciate you. You gave us so much, and to think that this was free is like mind-boggling. So God bless you.
You're welcome. Thank
Seriously,
you, Jazz. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you
you're
so
welcome.
much.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So can the funds that's borrowed from the IUL does that what we borrow from the IUL, is that still accruing compound interest or what's left
Yes.
over?
No, yes. So the beautiful thing about the IUL is that they're not taking the money from your cash value. They're taking the money from their own bank account. So,
Mhm.
for example, like my company that I'm with is Emeritus. And so when Emeritus is issuing me out a loan, they're not gonna touch my cash value. They're going to give me the loan amount from their bank
Mhm.
account, which is what you want.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Also, is the land under the house protected in the trust? So if it's the primary residence, is the land under it protected?
Yeah, as long as the land is attached to the deed.
Is that a typical thing or is that something very specific?
So it depends on the type of property it is. So some properties, usually it's like commercial properties, or like if you have like a mobile homes and stuff like that, where that property is not attached with the land. So
Mm,
you're pretty much like leasing that area. So it depends on the type of deed that you have, but for residential, if you have
mm.
a regular house, then yeah. It's together.
Okay, thank you. And one last question. What percentage of the cash value would we have access to borrow against, and how soon can we deploy that money?
That's a really good question. So it depends on one, how you structure it, and then it also
Mm,
depends on your surrender charge. So when you create your policy, there's going to be a surrender charge, which is like a security deposit. Your surrender
mhm.
charge has to be fulfilled before you're able to borrow. So let's just say that your surrender charge is $2,000, right? But your premiums are like $200, right? So it's probably going to take you 10 months to a year to cover the surrender charge, because remember, if you're paying the 200, and let's just say 40 of it is going to the carrier, then a portion of that 40 is going to the surrender charge. So some people, if they want to borrow quickly, then they'll just pay off the surrender charge. Now, the surrender charge, you're going to get it back as long as you don't cancel your policy within 2 years.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to get started. I already made the decision that, I'm the wealth builder of my family. I'm the youngest, but I take responsibility. If not me, then who? And like the fact that I feel like I've called you into my life. It was just literally this week, and it's not by happenstance. So I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for answering your calling.
Yes, thank you, Jazz. I'm so glad that you see it, because that's exactly what it is. I am here to serve the people, and this is an assignment. So this is what God has put on my heart to share, and I'm being obedient. So thank you, Jazz. I appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to helping you throughout this entire process, okay?
Thank you.
Welcome. All right. Next we have Richie. Is it Richie and Miriam?
Yes. Hi, Christina.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Thanks. I'm here with my wife, Miriam.
Hi,
Hi,
Christina.
Miriam. Nice to meet you.
You as well. Thanks.
So we've been watching your YouTube videos and stuff, and we've been your this is these three are going to line up with what we want to do. I was a student pastor at a church at different churches for about 30 years, and my wife worked at a church, but we also do other things. Currently. We are looking to do all three, the trusts, the business trust, the family trust, and also we're going to do a ministry. So we want to do the faith-based FBO.
Yes.
Um, the situation that we are dealing with is um, we are not going to be in a position to pass down anything to kids or anything, but we made a decision a long time ago that we would pass down to some specific charities that ministries and things that we want to pass our estate down to. So in the meantime, we're trying to figure out kind of like the logistics because most of your talks and stuff talk about passing it down to the generations of your legacy and your children and all that. Our situation is where we aren't doing that. So um, if we were to set up the business trust, the family trust, and also the ministry trust, would that be a situation where I would be the trustee and Mir would be the beneficiary so that she could receive funds that we're creating along the way. And then, like, if I was to pass, and she would be the successor of the trustee, and then we would at that point have instructions to set up the charities of the ministries that we want to be the beneficiaries until she passes. But will she still be able to utilize the assets to live on and all that, even though the beneficiaries are the ministries, or how would we set that up? It's just
Yeah.
really kind of different than most traditional ways that you are have been talking about.
Yeah, so one thing that you need to be aware of is that the beneficiaries can be entities, and then those entities are other churches, ministries, and other organizations. So that is completely possible, and a lot of our community members do it like that. So the way that you have given your example of your structure, it sounds good. You can do it that way. So you can be the trustee and she can be the beneficiary. You can also be a beneficiary as well. You just can't be the only beneficiary. So,
Okay.
so both of you guys can be the beneficiary. She can definitely be the successor. And then once she's the successor, she can go ahead and put those other entities as the beneficiary, and she can leave herself as the trustee and the beneficiary so that she's still able to benefit. Another thing is that as long as she's carrying out business duties, task, administration for the trust is going to pay for it. So for
Okay.
example, where she lives, the trust will pay for it because she's conducting trust business from that location. So there's a lot of living benefits inside of the trust for the person that operates it as well.
Great. Thank you, Christina. That helps. And one other quick question. So you mentioned if a business is in the trust, then someone who wants to file a lawsuit cannot do so against you as the owner of the business because the trust owns the business. So then could the courts take what's inside the trust if the
That's
business is sued?
that is always a possibility. So the trust can end up in court. And so that is always a possibility that the trust can be sued and assets be taken away. So I don't want you to think that the trust doesn't have the ability to get sued. So with that type of business, because business in general is high liability, right? The way that you're going to be operating it is as a holding company, which means that you won't have any assets outside of the LLC or the corporation, and which means that you wouldn't even like have like cash even in
Okay.
in that type of entity. So it could be a situation to where If there's a judgment that's on the trust, right, but there's no assets, you can just bankrupt the trust.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
But
Well,
the unincorporated business trust does not have to operate, it does not have to own LLC, correct? We
oh,
can,
yeah,
but we don't
correct.
have to. We could run our business right out of the unincorporated
Correct.
business trust, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Next we have Jeanette. Hi, Jeanette.
Hi, Christina.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you.
You're
So,
welcome.
if there is a situation where someone has multiple trusts, let's say the three that are in your presentations, if we have those three and we have assets in them, and there are only a couple of beneficiaries, and if there's some unfortunate situation where they all are taken away, what happens to the trust and all of its assets and funds?
Okay, so are you saying that there's nobody left? Like,
Correct.
like there's no trustee? What about the successor trustee? There's no successor trustee?
So let's just say there's an unfortunate tragedy and the few people that are listed on the trust are gone. Everybody. What happens to everything at
Yeah.
that point?
Yeah, so then the trust becomes inoperative,
Of
unfortunately.
course.
And
Right.
so and if it is inoperative, then the trust will end up in court, and the court system is going to place a court appointed trustee, and then those assets are going to be dispersed based off of the court decision.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if, and spin-off question, sorry, do you know if, as far as it ending up in court, what would be the things that would initiate that would lead to that? Would it, of course, the businesses aren't being handled, of course, nothing's being handled.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, so it could be like it could be local authorities that it's come to their attention that the house is abandoned, or there's, overdue taxes, and this trust is in this property is in a trust. So it could be that, or it could be an estranged individual that wants to make claims to the assets. Those
okay,
would be the only two things.
okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Then we have Mr. Sims.
Yes, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you again for doing this. So,
Yes, you're welcome. My pleasure.
so I have a few questions. One is, can a revocable trust have separate grantor, trustee, and beneficiary to not be viewed as like an alter ego trust?
So yes, the revocable trust can have separate parties, but what makes it revocable is the nature of the trust, meaning what's inside of the contract. So it's still revocable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, the other questions I had was regarding the IUL.
Yeah.
At what point during the process of setting up the trust should or the IUL kind of be open? And are some better than others? And do you have like recommendations in the course for some insurance carriers that may be better than others?
Yeah, we have an internal insurance department that helps you set up your IUL policies. So we set you up with the best carriers for you. So we'll do like an application, and then we'll shop around for each carrier for their policies. So if you're saying is one carrier better than the other, yes, it just depends. So all of the IUL products are different. So it's just like going down the cereal aisle and you're seeing that there's a lot of cornflakes, right? And you got different brands, and some of them taste different, some of them are better, some of them are not. So we just look for the best one for you. And what was the first part of your question?
The first part
I think it's
was,
at what point do you set
yeah, at what point do you set up the
up the
IUL
IUL
in
for
the
the trust?
in the trust process? Is that something you would do like while you're setting up the
Yes,
business? You go,
simultaneously.
oh yeah,
Simultaneously.
simultaneously. Oh, okay.
Yeah, tomorrow is not promised, so you don't want any delays with
Wait,
your policy.
okay. Um, the other question I had is, sorry. How long would you say it takes to develop business credit for the unincorporated business trust? I mean, I know there's probably varying things that determine how long, one
Yeah.
would operate on their own terms as far as, doing what's necessary. But um, I know sometimes there could be hiccups in between that. So I'm just trying to get an understanding on how soon one could actually acquire business credit to start generating income through lines of credit, things of that nature.
Yeah, so you can have lines of credit immediately. And you can develop, so with the business credit, you have to have at least like 8 to 10 trade lines in order for you to generate a paydex score, which is like a FICO score, but on the business side, we call it paydex.
Okay.
So you can get a payday score as early as like 60 days. But typically it'll take you roughly around like 6 months. And it depends on, like you said, there's various different things. So if you're intentional about it, if you're out here like doing your applications, getting your trade lines, things like that,
Mm.
like you can be up and running in 6 months.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mhm.
All right. And the last thing I was curious about was how do um TCUs equate to like actual assets? How does that break down?
So, okay, so the TCUs, they represent beneficial interest. Okay. So, for example, if you have, let's just say you have 4 properties, right? And you have two beneficiaries, right? And so it's 50-50. So the trustee is the one that is going to disperse those assets. So they might disperse it to where you get 2 houses and you get 2 houses. So you can actually put the disbursement of the assets. You can actually decide that now. So
Oh, okay.
you can place it into the trust. Who gets what if you want it to be specific. But at the end of the day, it is also going to be the trustee's discretion. So they have to carry out what you are putting in place now.
Okay.
Yeah. And it has to be equivalent to their TCUs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the last thing was, do you have a section in there in the course where you kind of give tips and tricks for if you had multiple trustees? Because of course, if we're opening up a family trust, it may invite having multiple trustees rather than just one. So I'm curious how it works with voting and possibly becoming deadlocked if you happen to have an even amount of trustees where you may not agree on certain aspects of, decision-making process.
Yeah, so we talk about that. So those scenarios are included. So
Okay.
we call it a board of trustees where you have, multiple trustees within your organization. So the number that we tell you to appoint is 3, between 3 and 5, but you want it to be an odd number so that in the event that there is a vote, it can actually lead to a unanimous vote.
Okay.
If it can't lead to a unanimous vote, then you want to put policies in place for who is going to serve as a tiebreaker. So those, there's a lot of different tips and tricks as you mentioned.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's all I have, but thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Mr. Sims. Thank you. Next, we have Sarah. Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Hello, hello. Hi,
Hi, Sarah, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you so much for the workshop. It's very Very informative, a lot of really great information, very easy to follow. Although it was a lot of information, but yeah, it was really great workshop. I have a question. So if I have a child with special needs, right? Um, I want to know what kind of trust should I look into? Um, being that, she might not be able to make certain decisions herself.
Okay, that's a great question. So, what you want to do is you want to establish your family trust, and then you can put special need provisions inside of there. So we have a lot of community members that they are special needs and have children with special needs. So we have special needs provisions that we recommend that you place inside of your trust. And what you would also want to do is you want to create a subtrust for the individual that has special needs, and that subtrust is just going to be their trust that the family trust is going to feed their trust, and their trust is going to provide for them.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. All right, and then next we have Richie and Miriam.
Actually, I think Jeanette was next.
Okay, Jeanette, you have your hand up?
I didn't know that it didn't disappear. No, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah,
I'll
yeah.
lower it.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Yeah, we have just a one quick question that we failed to ask the first time. So setting up the trusts, I know we have to have a grantor. Does the grantor drop off once the trusts are created and the trustee
Correct.
takes over?
Yes.
Okay, so who does that have to be, or could that be Miriam? Like if I'm going to be the trustee and then we're both going to be beneficiaries, could she be the grantor, or
That,
would we
that's a
need to?
great that's a great question. So, if she's the grantor, then there's no way for her to drop off if she's still the beneficiary.
Got it.
So the grantor cannot be any other, cannot serve any other position inside of the trust. They can only be the grantor. And that person is locked out of the trust, because it's a non-grantor trust.
Grantor, yeah.
Yes. So,
So, do you recommend a certain kind of person? Like, could it be a relative or a friend, or because they're just gonna, they're
right.
just
So recommendation, best practice, first and foremost is non blood related individual. So, a best friend, a neighbor, someone like that. And then if that is not a viable option, then you would have to customize the trust to allow it to be a relative.
Yeah, we could find a non-blood relative to be the grantor. I just didn't quite know how soon after it's created. Because I know the grantor, the trustee, and the
Notary.
notary have to meet together, and then once everything's kind of finalized, the grantor can drop out, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So, but then is the grantor then not the one that's funding the trust?
So the grantor is going to put the first thing inside of the trust. And so the way that we show you within our training is a $1. So it's something of intrinsic value. So the way that we would initially document what we call the initial consideration is that the grantor hands the trustee $1.
Okay, that makes sense. Great.
Yep. Yeah. We're very thorough, so we show you every single little thing.
Love it. Yes.
Yeah. Well, those are good questions. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
You're welcome. All right. And then Mr. Sims has a question, and then we are going to adjourn for the evening.
Yeah, sorry, one more. As far as trustees and beneficiaries, would you say that it kind of makes sense would it be problematic if you had three trustees and they're each beneficiaries? Would
There
you
has to
recommend having more beneficiaries than the amount of trustees, or?
Yeah, so there has to be more beneficiaries. So it doesn't have to be like numeric, but it can't just be that all three trustees are
Oh,
all three beneficiaries. There
okay.
has to be other beneficiaries there.
Okay. I asked because I gotta run it past other family members as well and kind of make it make sense for who's
Yeah,
gonna
thank
be
you. Makes sense.
beneficiaries,
Yeah.
who's trustees. Well,
Right,
okay.
right.
All
Yes.
right. Thank you.
Yeah, well, if you need an extra beneficiary, I'm available.
Got you.
Yeah, that goes for everyone on the call. Oh my gosh. Well, tonight was so awesome, you guys. I am so glad that you guys stayed the whole time. Alexandra, you have a question?
Yes, I have my
Okay, go for it, my dear.
okay. Oh my gosh, I have a headache because I paid someone to do a trust for me. And
Uh-huh.
one night I went to sleep and I woke up and you were in my feed and I
Yes.
was the spirit. So you talking what you're talking tonight and it's totally different from what's in my trust. I said, "Oh my God." I'm glad I didn't sign this thing and try to do anything with it because the guy telling me I could be a trustee and the grantor use and this is an irrevocable trust, and you said you cannot be both. So I'm
Mhm.
gonna let you answer that question for me. Oh
Yes.
my gosh,
Absolutely.
so that's true. I cannot be the trustee and a grantor.
Or irrevocable, correct.
He keeps saying yes, you can. I'm like, okay, no, we're not gonna do that. Number
No.
two, he said, can I be a beneficiary? I know that he didn't make me a beneficiary, even though I guess I'm gonna have to be the trustee. But can I
Yeah.
be a beneficiary as well?
Yeah, as long as you're not the grantor, you can, yes.
Okay, he didn't do that. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with this, the money I spent, and it's not right. I'm glad I woke up and saw that, and that's probably the spirit telling me, do not take that and have it notarized. That is not right.
Yes, and also do your due diligence so that you can also confirm with your own research that it wasn't structured correctly.
Okay. My next question was, oh, and I'm married, and my husband, he like, I'm not signing the trust because I don't blame him because he said, you need to have a lawyer do it. I said, no, we don't really need a lawyer, but I don't feel good about what this guy has done. So,
Mm.
but my question is, what's the question? Can I have this trust without my husband's signature and
Um,
make my dad the grantor, I be the trustee, and I make myself a beneficiary, and then put the kids and the grandkids?
yeah, he doesn't have to have a position within the trust if you don't want to appoint him to a specific position.
Okay, so I guess I'm gonna have to try to get in touch with you to help me fix this thing before I can't sign it and do it like that, or tell him to fix it. I don't know what to do. I got the worst headache ever.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Oh my
Yes,
God.
yeah, you can so you can book a call with me. The link is inside of the chat. And
Yeah.
then you can just share some more details. I'll be able to help you out, okay?
Okay, and what number I call?
So the phone number is 305-749-9215.
305.
Yep, 749-9215. So you should have received a text message from us. So whatever number that you see, we have two different numbers. We have a toll-free number as well. So if
Okay.
you received a text message reminder, then you can text that number. And then you can also book a call. But it's in the chat too. So if you can take a look at the chat.
I'm gonna screenshot it now.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. You're so
You're
beautiful.
welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra. And thank you to everyone who was on the call today. You guys were highly interactive. I loved how you guys were able to participate. And I just want to tell you guys to take action because tomorrow is not promised, okay? And right now, the trust is one of the most powerful things that you can do in order to change the trajectory of your family because now instead of you know, operating as just this regular person out here in society with your name and your social security number. Now you can operate as a trustee of a trust, right? And if you have children, now you can raise your children to where they are trustees and beneficiaries of a trust. So you're going to be not only impacting your life, but your entire lineage, because you're changing the trajectory of your children's lives as well and their descendants. So it is extremely powerful, but it takes one person to do it. And that is everyone who's on this call. You guys are the generational curse breakers in your family, and it is your duty to be able to take those shackles off. It could be shackles of poverty, it could be shackles of anything. You need to take them off, um, because wealth is your birthright, and just having a trust is the foundation of it all. So without that, without further ado, you guys have a good night. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope that me and my team are able to assist you through this whole entire process. So bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Good
Thank
night.
you. We enjoyed it.